What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Trapfish Aquatics. Today we're going to be talking about things to look for when you're buying a used aquarium. Alright, so you're in the market for a used aquarium and you don't really know what you're looking for and things to watch out for. Buyer beware things. So there's only a couple things that you really need to pay attention to because there's not a whole lot involved with the making of an aquarium. And specifically we're going to talk about glass aquariums in this video. So really all you have to look out for are the tank frames, the overall condition of those, whether they're cracked or broken. Sometimes they can be repaired, most of the time they have to be replaced. So you got to look out for that. You got to look out for the silicone to see if the silicone is decaying or eroding or has been damaged in any way. And the glass, which the only thing that you're really going to see in glass is cracks and chips on the corners. So we're going to go through those topics. We're going to talk about them a little bit, and then I'll take you outside, show you some examples on the tanks that I'm repairing. So the first thing I want to talk about is tank frames, right? So tank frames, you can get some cracking in those if they're left outside. If the previous owner left them outside for a while, the UV light could damage and weaken the plastic, so those are things that you got to consider. Make sure that the tanks haven't been left outside for an extended period of time. And overall, once you're looking at the tank and you get there, make sure you're checking it out, make sure it's not broken at all. If it is broken, luckily you can go to your local fish store and purchase a new frame through them. They have access to manufacturer parts. You have to do that at a mom and pop shop though. You cannot do that at local chain stores. PetSmart, Petco, Pet Supplies Plus do not have access to those. You have to go to a mom and pop local fish store to do that. But generally speaking, if you get a crack in your frame, you're going to want to replace it. Now, replacing a frame is not very hard to do. You just scrape out the silicone from underneath it, pull it off, you take the new one, run a bead of silicone around it, and put it back in place of the old one. It's a very easy repair. Now, if the frame is not in overall super bad condition, sometimes they are repairable. I do have two tanks right here, right next to me, the 55-gallon here and the 20-gallon here, that do have repaired frames. This tank right here has a split in it right here in the middle. I just siliconed the plastic to the glass and then smoothed it all out, removed all the excess silicone, and now the silicone is adhered and is holding this frame together, and it is working perfectly fine. The other repair that I have is right here on this 55-gallon. You guys can't see that from right there. It's right here in the middle. So this crack here actually runs up and straight across about this far in to the center brace on this. Now, being that it's dead center in the middle, I felt that I could repair that and it wouldn't have to be replaced because it was not risking breaking across the center brace there. So I did the same repair. I repaired the faceplate here with silicone against the glass and plastic so it wouldn't expand anymore, causing any more fracturing of the plastic. As well as the underside of the cross brace, where it was split, I applied a large bead of silicone across that to hold that together as well as I could, so that I wouldn't have to worry about it splitting even more. Aside from that, if the frame on the tank is no longer adhered, broken in multiple places, you're definitely going to want to replace that. And to show you an example of that, we'll go out to the garage and I will show you a severely broken frame. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about tanks that don't need center bracing. So let's go out to the garage and we can talk about that. Okay, I'm out in the garage. I want to apologize for the LED lighting causing the camera to flicker a little bit. But tank frames. So I want to talk about damage to tank frames that's a little more extensive than just a crack. And I want to use this 55-gallon here as an example. So if we look at this frame, this is broken, like completely broken. It's no longer attached on the corner here at all. The silicone has completely let go. It's broken here. We've got a split running down this edge and a split running along this edge. Something like this is not worth trying to repair. You're better off going to a local fish store or online and purchasing a new frame for the tank. Just remove this old one, silicone the new one on, and you'll be good to go. Simple repair, right? Just replace it. The next thing I want to talk about while I'm out here is center braces, right? So center braces, if they're on your tank and they're meant to be there, like on this 36, on the 55 out here, or even on this 125 back here, center braces are extremely important. The reason they're there is because the glass is very thin, And without them, the glass will bow, and if it bows out and it bows out too far, it will eventually break and cause a disaster. So if you've ever had a glass of water and spilled that on the floor, you know it makes a heck of a mess. Just imagine 30 gallons or 40 gallons of water on your floor, how that would be. So you don't want that. If your tank is meant to have a center brace on it, make sure it has one on there. You can either Euro brace by using a piece of glass and silicone to make your own center brace, or just replace the frame and make sure it's got the proper center bracing. One exception to the rule on that, if I spin around here, this is my 150 gallon that I have yet to get into my fish room. You can see that it does not have cross bracing on here, and that is because the glass is enormously thick. If you look at the glass up here on this 55 compared to the glass here on this 150, this is almost as thick as my thumb, and this back here is nowhere near. This glass is 5/8 of an inch thick. This 55 is 1/4 of an inch thick, and on the 125 over here, that glass is 3/8 of an inch thick. So this glass is almost double the size of the glass on the 125, even though it only holds 25 more gallons, because it does not have cross bracing. So the thickness of the glass compensates for the cross bracing, so it does not need the cross bracing. That being said, this tank was made in the 70s. They don't make them like this anymore unless you custom order one. So if you see a tank without cross bracing, check to make sure along the frame rails to see if it has been cut out or broken. If not, and the glass is very thick, chances are it was made that way and it is okay. Aside from that, if you have a tank that is of a rarer variety like the one I have inside, my 75 gallon long, and you need a frame, they do not make them. You cannot buy one, and custom places won't make them either because they're an odd size. Instead of being 12.5 inches like a 55 gallon, it is 13. So their standard materials don't fit that. In that case, you're either going to have to throw the tank away, turn it into a terrarium, or make a frame. In my case, I choose to make a frame, so I will take you guys inside and talk about how I made a frame for my tank. Alright, so this is my 75 gallon long. The dimensions on this are 72 by 13 deep by 21 tall. And this is the tank that I had to make a homemade frame for. The reason being is that the original frame on this, both of the cross braces, that had 2 of them, were broken. And there was a crack in the frame right in the front between those 2 cross braces. So I reached out to my local fish store, tried getting a frame through them. They couldn't get me one. I tried a different fish store. They couldn't get me one. I called the manufacturer directly to see if there was somebody that I could get a hold of to get one of these, and they informed me that this tank is so rare that they no longer even make parts for it, and I would have to either to just turn it into a terrarium or throw it away. I didn't want to do that, so I went ahead and made a homemade frame for it. So this frame is made out of 1x3 wood. And basically I added 1/8 of an inch to all the dimensions. So the brace that runs across the front here on the frame was 72 and 1/8, and 13 and 1/8, and so on and so forth. And then I assembled the whole thing together. Right, I added some cross bracing in here, and I used cabinetry screws. So basically it's a number 8 screw with a large flat head on it, like you would have a washer in there. Plus they're brass coated, so they look really nice. It's not like a standard screw, so they won't rust either. So I put the whole thing together, made sure it fit the tank well. I then stained it and clear coated it. A couple coats, 4 or 5 coats on it. Because you don't want any water getting into the wood and swelling it, because if the wood swells you risk it expanding, squeezing the tank and bursting, and you don't want 75 gallons of water all over your floor. So once I was sure that the stain and clear coat was dry, I went ahead, fitted it back to the tank, and siliconed it in place, and then ran a bead of silicone across the top of the glass inside the tank so that no water would come up, go over, and come down the outside of the tank. So this tank has been up and running for almost a year now. I've had 0 issues with it. The glass is not bowing at all. This frame is holding it perfectly well. So if you guys want a little bit more of a detailed video on this frame, go ahead and let me know, and I'll make a video on it. But aside from this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn around and I'm going to show you the cracks in these tanks that I was talking about originally. That way you get a better idea of what those look like versus the tank that was in the garage that had a very severely bad damaged frame to it. So I'm going to go ahead and spin the camera around here and I'll show you guys those tanks. Alright, so just real quick, I wanted to show you guys the splits in the tank that I was talking about real quick before we moved on to the next topic. So if you look right here, you can see this split here and the silicone right here above it that was used to repair that. And then this split right here that runs up over the center brace, and I use silicone to repair that. So just to show you guys that you can repair them a little bit. So on to the next topic. The next thing I want to talk about is the glass on the aquarium, right? So the glass in the aquarium, there's only two things that can happen. It's either going to be broken or chipped, right? If the glass is broken, you can replace it if you really want to. Personal opinion, I don't think it's worth replacing anything 55 gallons or less, because generally getting a piece of glass custom cut for your aquarium and then having it installed or even installing yourself is going to cost just about as much as buying a new tank. So generally on smaller tanks I don't recommend replacing it. I recommend just buying a new tank. However, most people would want to replace it just because it's, you know, it's cost effective depending on where you live. Chips in your aquarium, if they aren't very deep, if they're very superficial, I do have a couple up here. I'll take a video of that after this and talk about it a little bit. If they're superficial chips, it's not really something to worry about. If they're a little bit more severe, depending on the depth of the chip and how far across the tank it goes, and the location, whether it's higher or lower on the tank, could be a little concerning. But generally speaking, if it's not too deep, it is still okay to run an aquarium with a chip in it. So I'm going to take the camera, spin it around here, and we can talk about specific chips that I have in my tanks and give you guys a better idea of what you're looking at. Alright, so chips in the aquarium glass. So I got a couple chips in this 29 gallon right here that I want to show you guys. Most of them are superficial, one of them is a little bit worse. So I'm going to show you them, we're going to talk about them a little bit, and then that'll be it. Right? So we got this chip right here. Right? You can see in the glass there's a notch here and here. There's also a little bit of one right here. These are very superficial. They're not very deep into the glass. They're not causing a lot of structural risk or damage. It's just on the surface. So something like that I'm not worried about. I feel perfectly confident running a tank with little superficial chips like that. Now the one that worried me a little bit is the one back here, right? So there's that one up there. So you can see that that one is a little deeper. It's about half the thickness of the glass, right? And it actually extends back about an inch into the tank. So being that it's so large, I was a little bit more concerned with how it was going to affect the overall structure of the glass. So I chose to fill it up, let the tank sit for a while with water in it before I even chose to fill it up with sand and rock and wood and fish and everything, and make sure it was going to hold. So it ended up holding, so I was confident in setting it up. So I went ahead and set everything up. Now, something else you can do is, if you do have chips in your tank like this, is you can use silicone and an old credit card or something like that. If you have sharp edges, you squirt a little bit of silicone in there and then scrape it off this way and this way, and try and get a little bit of a corner on the silicone and let it dry and cure. What that's going to do, it's going to dry clear, and you're not really going to be able to see the chips from the front anymore. If I held the camera out like this, you can't really see them, and if you're more focused on everything going on out here, you're not going to see those chips. Right? So it draws attention away from the chips. It makes it so the edges aren't sharp anymore. I can run my hand on that. It's not going to hurt you because the silicone is there protecting you. So that's something I do anytime I get a chip like that, just to protect me and draw attention away from it and back towards the fish and the aquascape, right? So I do have one more chip I want to talk about, and it's actually over here on my 75 gallon. Move my light. So I have a superficial chip here on my 75 gallon. You guys can see it right here. Being that it is superficial, I felt that this wasn't going to be detrimental at all. Because basically what happens with these chips, right, is the glass is struck on the corner, it sends fractures through the glass, they come back out to the surface, the glass chips off, and that's where you get your chip from. So being that the cracks are no longer going through the glass pane, you're not at risk anymore from it breaking because the fracture has already exited the glass. So it's not going to cause any more structural damage, but it is going to be more brittle, so the next time it gets hit, it's going to chip even worse. And generally, you're only going to get chips on non-tempered glass. Tempered glass is much stronger than regular plate glass. If you were to hit a tempered glass tank hard enough for it to chip, chances are that entire pane of glass is going to shatter. So generally, if you see a chip in glass, 90% of the time, I would say that it is plate glass. So that's glass. So let's go ahead and talk about silicone. So the last thing that you really need to look at is your silicone, right? Silicone is a very important part of an aquarium. It holds the glass together, holds all the water in. It is one of the key components in keeping a fish tank together. So what could go wrong with silicone? So basically you're going to get 2 to 3 different things that can go wrong with your silicone. It can either lose its adhesion to the glass from temperature swings if the tank is left outside in the cold. So if an aquarium is left outside in freezing temperatures, the glass will contract, and depending on how many times that happens, it can cause separation of the silicone. So if aquarium has been left outside in the freezing cold, make sure you check on your silicone to see if the silicone has released from the glass. Age will also allow silicone to release from the glass. It just loses adhesion. There can be physical damage if somebody was cleaning their tank and they used an algae scraper or a razor blade and accidentally cut the silicone. It could be damaged in that way. And then there's also decomposing silicone, which basically it erodes itself away. And I do have examples of all of that in my tanks out in the garage. So we'll go out there and I'll show you some video of that too. Okay, back out in the garage. I want to talk about silicone, right? So on this tank, this is a 36-gallon bow front. It's got black silicone. It was made by Perfecto. Perfecto is a Marineland company. They generally use black silicone. So one thing I want to talk about is how to check your silicone for either loss of adhesion or deterioration, right? So loss of adhesion, if you take your finger, you can see the silicone here. If you take your finger and dig it into the silicone, pulling down and away like this, right? Down and away. The silicone should not peel off from the glass. As you can see, it's not peeling off. So this silicone seam is still good. Down here in the bottom of the tank, you can see the silicone there that is yellow. The reason it's yellow is because it has lost its adhesion. You see how that peels away from the tank like that? That silicone is no good. Up here it peels away also. Up here it peels away a little bit. And it's peeling away all the way around the bottom and across the whole bottom down here. That silicone has lost its adhesion. You're going to have to cut all of the silicone out and replace it. It's not hard to do. Check out my resealing an aquarium video. It doesn't take a lot of work. It doesn't take a lot of money. And it's very easy to do. So that is failing adhesion. So the next thing I want to talk about is deterioration or decay. And if I come over to my 150, you can see here on the 55, you can see the silicone, right? On my 150 here, you cannot see the silicone. All you see is the glass. The reason for that is because there's no silicone left, right? So all the silicone that was in here should have come out to about here, is now gone. The only thing holding this corner together is the seam, which is the silicone in between this plate of glass and this plate of glass, right here where they meet. The seam is the only thing left on here. Over here on the other side, there is a very small sliver of silicone, and when you touch it with your finger, it peels right up. And as you look down into the bottom, you can see how big the silicone seams are supposed to be. They're probably about 1 inch wide in each direction, and there's none left in the corners. So that would be deterioration. You will also get similar results like that if you hit the silicone with a razor blade or an algae scraper too hard, you can actually remove the silicone. So you want to be very cautious when you're using a scraper that you don't damage your silicone by hitting it with it. So that's pretty much it for silicone. So we'll head back inside. Alright guys, so that's pretty much all you need to know about looking at used aquariums. Just to make sure you check the glass, the frames, and the silicone. So go ahead out, get yourself a used tank. There's nothing wrong with buying used. Most of the time they don't have any issues at all. It's just somebody who's getting out of the hobby, and you just get to pick up a cheap tank. But that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys for watching Trap Fish Aquatics. I do have more content coming out this weekend. I'm going down and filming 1, maybe 2 local fish stores, doing fish store tours, and I might even interview the owners of the stores, see if they can give a little history about themselves and their store and how things have been going. So if you want to watch that, that'll be coming out either Saturday or Sunday. But until then, I will see you guys in the next video.